Hey guys, welcome back to the Casual NBA Fanatic podcast. Now, we are up to Game 7 in the Western Conference Finals now between OKC and San Antonio. And the one big discrepancy from what we've seen from this year's OKC squad reversing back to the playoff squad from last year is really just the inability for JDub to stay on the floor. And that's the point. I mean, the fact is, like, when you look at the outlook for this Oklahoma City Thunder team, and as we look for them as the next great dynasty in this league, whether or not San Antonio take that clock or OKC do, it really falls down to also Jalen Williams being able to not just progress from where he was before, but even just to stay on the floor. And in year 2 of, this championship level hunt, he hasn't been able to stay on the floor, and it's really affected OKC's driving diversity across the floor. And obviously in the Spurs series, there was more of a contrast that between games 1 to 3 and now games 4 to 6 in just the Spurs defensive coverage and how that's slanted more towards OKC needing, less shot spacing and just more of a further need for penetration ball handlers too. This is a unit that is also deprived of Ajay Mitchell, the second or top 3 driver on the team as well. So 2 of your top 3 drivers of the basketball, both out. So you're relying wholly on SGA, and we know SGA doesn't bring that power element to the game either. And that's just a huge dimension that a lot of these playoff teams historically rely on. You talk about the greatness of LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo as guys that pressure the rim, guys like Luka and Jokic, how they methodically pressure the rim. It's all through just power and physicality. And we know SGA, he plays with physicality on the offensive end. He actually does. But obviously, most of his tools are agility-based and just cognitive timing-based as well, with the anticipation stuff, changing direction, changing speeds. None of it is just brutally powering through players. That is what JDub brings, and to a lesser degree, Ajay Mitchell brings that somewhat as well. And without both these guys, San Antonio have been able to just cover OKC's closeout attacks way more. They can play way more aggressive on the perimeter, force guys to put the ball on the floor because they're not scared of guys like Jared McCain, Alex Caruso, Isaiah Joe actually putting the ball on the floor and creating real credible dribble penetration where they can make athletic plays or just polished plays at the rim, especially with Wemby eventually rotating over on those sequences. And that's why basically, again, just playing the ball handlers more front up. And really, San Antonio in these past 3 games really only offering substantial help at the rim and on those drop coverage sequences. They're not helping from the weak sides and the nails as much as well as aggressively as they were in games 1 and 3. And sometimes it does force SGA to also second guess, but also just force a lot of tough looks. Because the fact is, in a series like this, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander might be the best driver of the basketball in the NBA right now. With all the leverage points that he has as a jump shooter on all these different spots on the floor, the amount of leverage that he has enables him to get all of these super easy driving lanes. Fact is, he can't get to the rim when Victor Wembanyama is going to be helping off Isaiah Hartenstein or off perceived weak shooters all the time. And that is what's really allowed the Spurs' athletic and physically athletic defenders really just get up into his jersey continuously all series long. And that's where you see guys like Steph Castle, even like Dylan Harper, Julian Champagnie, Devin Vassell, all these guys just switching and offering the best sort of man isolation possessions because all they have to do is cover the jump shot. You don't need to cover the drive. If he gets past you, there's collapsing help and there's a Victor Wembanyama problem that OKC still are finding trouble to solve consistently. And basically, it's put an emphasis on, so obviously in games 1 and 3, when they're doubling, trying to get the ball out of SGA's hands, it's more putting the emphasis on the spot-up play's ability to knock down those no-dip, obviously those corner catches, knocking down shots from the wings on those threes. So it's just general shot-making under patient approach. They're not rushed in their shot-making, but it just put pressure on them to make difficult shots in general without much momentum. But now, since they're not helping as much off those weak sides and from the corners, it puts more of an emphasis on spot-up plays to either hit these no-dip threes against closeout contests, which are a bit more aggressive, or against their ability to actually fast, rapid, closeout attacks just ripping through against these highly physical athletes. And OKC just don't have that without Ajay Mitchell and Jalen Williams in the squad. These are 2 of the best athletes on this team. And it's just, again, a big contrast when you compare to the skill sets of Jared McCain, Alex Caruso, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, Luguentz Dort. These guys, again, aren't as fluid when they do attack off the dribble. There's not many of these counters where they can change direction, rapidly flip up their speed as well, hit these nice little footwork counters, and like actually get that athleticism and that vertical pop at the rim. These aren't guys that can do that. And that's what is actually playing into the game 4 and 6 wins for San Antonio. And without Jalen Williams and probably without Ajay Mitchell, like obviously Jalen Williams should play in game 7, but he does not look healthy at all. It was a pretty miserable game 6 today from him as well, coming off the bench. Just looking at the stat sheet, obviously the guy put up off the bench 10 minutes only, 1 point. He was a negative 18 on the floor, only took 1 shot the entire time. Completely out of rhythm, completely out of sorts there in terms of just the actual just polish as well. There's a ton of rust, even just with basic things like his handle. We know with JDub, one of the biggest things with him as a creator is he's not the most fluid in changing direction as fast when he's trying to break down defenders. He doesn't have the tightest handle in terms of that aspect. And even like today, super rusty from the get-go. And it's just exposing a lot of flaws for OKC's ability to generate floor-raising offense. Obviously, that's what they're doing. Obviously, San Antonio making it more of a floor-raising battle. They have physical advantages in the half court. And in these lineups where OKC is jagged with their like roster personnel, they have more consistent offensive skill and offensive talent on the floor. When you have guys like Victor, Champagne, and Vassell hitting from the corners as well. You have guys like Steph Castle, Dylan Harper. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox hasn't been good this series, but he still gives you that ball handling outlet as well. And that's why dragging it down to a floor-raising battle, letting SGA go one-on-one, and restricting as many of those wide-open looks that they were giving up clearly in the first 3 games. And obviously, SGA was generating those wide-open catch-and-shoot threes at the most elite level that you would ask for a pure scorer, but they've completely shut that tap off at a consistent level. And it's just the difference when AJ and JDub aren't there. Like, what's important with those two guys is that they also give you like different dynamics. I talked about how they give more of the power dynamic than what SGA gives you. JDub though, he is the pure power dynamic guy, the guy with all the stride and the release point length as well on that 7'2" wingspan. Just a ton of power coming from his hamstrings. Obviously the hamstrings are what are like hampering him right now. But he offers the power dynamic that SGA doesn't have as much. The one direction bolting speed. And then AJ Mitchell on the other hand, it's more of that quick low center of gravity agility mix. Again, that low center of gravity that he can distribute that power as well. And just the fluidity of his movement changes. That is what AJ Mitchell brings as well. But he brings a little more power again when he is lower to the ground because he can attack players through their base and open up their hips a lot more easier. And that's why, again, the floor-raising battle for OKC has never looked pretty because they don't have a Nikola Jokic, they don't have a Luka Doncic, a LeBron, or a Giannis, or a Kawhi Leonard. They have an SGA, but SGA thrives not in those highly physical environments, and that is what San Antonio are trying to make this game, because that is SGA's biggest weakness, and there is no Jalen Williams and no AJ Mitchell to try and will out more rim pressure drives that are effective for this team. And that's also the fact is, so again, when they do become these floor-raising battles in the half court, there's not as much transition, they're not turning the ball over and giving up all these fast break points, which plays into OKC's margin and possession battle. That puts more of an emphasis on what they are missing as well. And then, obviously, a guy like Jalen Williams, he gets paid $287 million. It's not just to score 20 points a game by driving the ball on relatively mediocre efficiency for an all-star as well. It's the ceiling-raising traits that he gives you. This is a top 15 defender on the planet when he is healthy. You talk about everything that he does on the weak side with the rim protection as well. He's one of the best weak side defenders in basketball in general. Isolation defense, you talk about just the build, 7'2" wingspan, strong, really low center of gravity for a wing. He can take on all of these positions. Specifically, he can take 1 through 4. He's actually had minutes at the 5 spot for this Oklahoma City Thunder team. He's just one of the best defenders in the NBA. And obviously, that's a ceiling-raising trait that you bring as well when you're one of the best off-ball apex defenders on the planet. You play in passing lanes, you force the possession battle to a massive degree for OKC. And then also just connected passing. whenever he is in actual momentum, he can provide plus spot-up shooting when he is comfortable and confident. It's the closeout attacking off the ball. It's maybe the extra work on the rebounds as well. Like, this is a high-quality athlete with physical traits. And they're missing all of that right now. And so when you're missing, again, what is actually a 3-level scoring package at its floor, like, it's just a lot that OKC are missing. And obviously you can't rely on Chet Holmgren consistently, especially in a matchup like this, to provide that offensive firepower game to game, especially when they can switch on the wings. Like, you saw Denver Vassell absolutely maul him today, where he's going to struggle to create and establish his positioning. And at the end of the day, when Chet's relying on fadeaways and tough over-the-top hooks, where his base is being completely pushed away, it's just pretty average offense, and they're lucky they have SGA to rely on. That's why we are at Game 7 right now. But it does look pretty grim. And then that's why with Jalen Williams, obviously with the injuries that he's had this year, it puts a little question mark on the value of the contract that he got, especially throughout the first year after they've signed him onto it. And next year, he'll be actually earning that money. And it's just the injuries. It started off with the wrist, and it's more or less been just the wrist injury and then the hamstring continuously. And the hamstring takes a ton of time, especially when you are a power player. You rely on the hamstring strength so much when you are exploding off that foot. So he's just going to have a big offseason regardless on if OKC wins this Game 7 and eventually wins the title or not. He's going to need a big recovery offseason in terms of that. And then any question marks about this guy's perceived aggression as a player and his will to want to be on the floor, you can't judge that until we have another offseason where he can actually work on his frame and the durability. Because a lot of that is actually just your discipline off the court. But obviously, after the first season after signing Jalen Williams to this contract, a guy that was knocking on the door of superstardom in that co-star spot, he's probably dropped down to more or less around that top 30 spot in the NBA in terms of player rankings. We'll have to see how he goes, but OKC do need him in Game 7 as well, and they need him to be fully polished up back to his typical form. So we'll see what happens. But it's an interesting dynamic that San Antonio has completely shifted the momentum and the outlook of this series in terms of what they are making OKC do. Don't get me wrong, I favor OKC in Game 7, but I think in large part to comfortably win Game 7, it's going to come down to Jalen Williams being able to play on the floor and offer another rim pressure outlet in a different perspective of that power. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you guys. Hopefully we'll enjoy Game 7. I'm sure it will be a blast. I'm an OKC fan, so hopefully we end up winning pretty comfortably for my sake. But I wouldn't mind a very good game of basketball. But regardless, you want a very strong finals appearance. And either OKC or San Antonio will make that series in the finals because New York look great. That'll be great finals to look forward to regardless. But I appreciate you guys for listening, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.